I guess the first thing I want to begin is the decision this morning in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, on a 5-4 vote, ruled against Montgomery County in the State Comptroller versus Wynn case. The budget impact is going to play out over a few years. So in the fiscal year whose budget we just agreed to the outlines of last week, we're expecting a hit of between $8 and $10 million. That impact will be substantially larger in fiscal years 17 and 18. We're expecting a hit of $55 million a year in fiscal 17 and 18. And then there will be projected a leveling out, but we would still face about $25 million less revenue than projected in fiscal years 19 and beyond. So this is requires us to be cautious. We need to live within available resources. Our school system in particular is taking a hit from Governor Hogan's decision not to release the GCEI money, but we're not going to be able to make up that shortfall with county resources. And for all of us, I think it requires us to be careful, as I think we have done, and make sure that where we're spending tax dollars, they're being put to their best and highest purpose. And I think we've already done that. I think we made responsible and appropriate decisions in the budget that we agreed to on Thursday and that we will finalize this Thursday. But, and this was not really a surprise. We've been discussing and projecting the impact of a adverse Wynn decision all along. So we're disappointed. We would have preferred to have that revenue, but the Supreme Court is the final arbiter, and we respect that decision, and it will have some impact on our spending decisions going forward. So there's a lot happening in the news, and I figure you all have issues on your minds. I'll yield and see what you'd like to ask me about.
Could you briefly explain, when people hear the Wynn case, many of them have no idea what this is, and again, does it affect the county in perpetuity? It
does affect the county in perpetuity. As best I understand the substance of it, where a taxpayer has income from out of state, the state of Maryland provides that taxpayer with a credit for other state taxes paid, but for whatever reason, I don't know the reason why, for that portion of the income tax that is paid to Montgomery County was not making that credit available. So Montgomery County was taxing Montgomery County residents on income earned in other states, where the state was providing a credit for out-of-state taxes paid on that income. And the Supreme Court said that Montgomery County must treat that out-of-state income in the same manner as the state of Maryland. Have I described that correctly?
That is correct. The case originated in Howard County, and of course it applies to all counties in Maryland.
So that's the substance of it.
We had a superintendent candidate name floated before us as a possible replacement for Dr. Starr, and then it was promptly withdrawn.
Yes.
Do you know anything about this? Have you been in contact with the school board on it?
So I was appreciative that the school board invited me to meet Dr. Houlihan on Friday morning. We had an excellent meeting, and I was very favorably impressed with him. The relationship between the superintendent and the board and the community, it has to be a good match on all sides. And over the weekend, on his own, Dr. Houlihan decided that it wasn't the right fit for him. So it was his decision. And what I think the school board now has to decide is, given where they are at in the calendar, and given that some of the hottest superintendent prospects have already signed up for the coming school year, whether they would persist with the search or whether they would name a one-year interim superintendent and reconvene a search, figuring that earlier in the season is better. I mean, that some of the prospects that they interviewed had already signed up with other school districts, and then Dr. Houlihan, who was their top prospect, has opted out. So whether they will proceed with interviewing other permanent candidates now, I know that they're giving active consideration to just having a one-year interim superintendent, and that the current acting superintendent, Larry Bowers, is a prime possibility to just stay on for another year. But none of that is final, but those are all the options that the school board is looking at, and I have been in touch with the school board's leadership this morning.
Did you hear anything from school board members or Dr. Houlihan himself about why he decided to withdraw?
I don't have any insight into that. When I met him Friday morning, he was very interested in the job. I mean, he was just like anyone in a job interview. He eagerly introduced himself to me and shook my hand and seemed interested. So I can't speak to his state of mind or what made him decide not to pursue it.
Do you feel like this could be a hit to, I mean, MCPS is, touted as one of the things we're most proud of, and this seems to be a little bit of a hit to the image if he decided on his own to withdraw from consideration.
Yeah, I understand that. I think, look, it's a very complex job and a very, very important job and a very prominent and visible job. And individuals who've held it in the past have, it's augured to, their good reputation. Certainly, Paul Vance and Jerry Weiss, to cite two obvious recent examples, left the job with their reputations enhanced and very well thought of. So I have every confidence that the leadership team that's in place right now at the school system is handling issues and making decisions and dealing with issues day to day. I don't think there's any reason for parents or the community to worry that there's any breakdown in the administrative leadership of the system. I think it's operating very effectively. And if the whole process is put on hold for a year, then that would just give more time to assess the talent pool that's out there in the country. I mean, this is, one of the things I learned in the interview with Dr. Houlihan is that the Houston Independent School District has more students than Montgomery County Public Schools and a smaller budget. So, the opportunity to work in a system like this one is still very desirable. Candidates who interviewed with the board, I was told by board members, repeatedly stressed, what a desirable assignment this is and what a great school district this is. And then Dr. Houlihan rose to the top, and for his own reasons, he decided not to pursue it. But, I know that there will be interest from top candidates, and that the current status of the school board is just fine. It's stable, and as decisions are needed, they're being made.
And you hadn't, when you met him, you said, I think, you weren't concerned about his experience, never having held a superintendent position before.
My first reaction, and I think anyone's first reaction, would be, gosh, he's young. But then in the course of the conversation, he was very thoughtful, very well-grounded, very substantive, knowledgeable in issues of handling diverse communities and dealing with demographic change and reaching out to low-income and minority students and families. So in the course of the conversation, my initial reaction of, wow, he's young, was assuaged by being very impressed with his depth. He had a lot of depth. So we'll see. I mean, he's not in the picture anymore.
Do you think a more public process would have prepared him for what to expect in Montgomery County regarding the issues that we face?
I don't want to interview my staff in public. I mean, I just think that in the positions that elected officials are in, there will be second guessing and criticism no matter what. We saw when Josh Starr was potentially interested in a job in the de Blasio administration in New York City, that there was resentment back here that somehow Montgomery County wasn't good enough. So for anyone who's in a highly visible position, which these positions are in school systems, and as you see, the media is very interested in the twists and turns and what people are doing, it places their current employment at risk if they appear to be pursuing other employment, even though I think most people do that in their own careers all the time. They move from one position to another and look for a promotion and advancement opportunities. But in these highly public positions, it seems to create a sense of, you're not really committed to us if you're thinking about leaving. And so the best prospects tend to want their interest to be kept confidential. And I think that if you had it it's already pretty public. Information, as we see, leaks out. But if it were any more public than this, I think it would interfere with the ability to identify the top prospects.
You mentioned Starr going to that New York job. Do you think that reflected negatively on Montgomery County?
I don't personally know. No, look, come on, New York City? Really? Obviously the people who are attracted to these superintendent jobs want to be national education policymakers. That's not surprising. We would expect that. And New York City is the largest city in America, largest school district in America. That's a enormous opportunity for an education policymaker. I don't think we should have taken that negatively, but some did. And it harmed Josh Starr's relationship with the community. It would have been better for him if it had all been kept confidential. I just cite that as an example of why applicants want their potential interest to be kept in confidence, and I respect that.
Why do you think the school board then decided to put out a release that this is our likely preferred candidate? Why not wait until they kind of had it all wrapped up?
Well, because the press has been intensely interested in this and asking a lot of questions, and The day that President O'Neill released her statement was the day that Dr. Houlihan met with a group of 16 community stakeholders. And once 16 people have met the guy, it's not a secret anymore. So that was an effort to be as transparent as reasonably possible within, some constraints and respect. But Dr. Houlihan was already far along enough in the process that, I think had he not withdrawn, he likely would have been hired. But that's behind us now.
The governor came out with this statement on the Purple Line saying to drive the costs down, and seemed to sort of say that people don't, people in Montgomery County and Prince George's County don't understand. The cost has to go down. Stubborn or just not refusing to budge on this. What did he say to his latest statements?
Now, when you say he came out with a statement, I'm not aware that he issued a statement.
It was a Post story that had.
I read the Post story, and he responded to questions.
Yeah.
County Executive Leggett is going to meet the governor this week, along with County Executive Baker. And I'm told that the reason for the delay is at the delay in making the decision is at Mike Miller's request, that Mike Miller asked the governor to provide the two county executives with the courtesy of another meeting. And so that will be a very important meeting. I hope that the governor will make the right decision. There's no question in my mind that, first of all, it's a great project. It's going to be approved by the federal government. It's critically needed. We've sat here at this table so many times and talked about it. I don't need to repeat that. I think for the governor himself, it would just be very unwise to kick the two largest counties in the state in the shins and take away our number one transportation priority. I think that there's a lot of interest from my constituents in having a two-party system and having more than one party compete and a competition of good ideas. And I think there's a willingness to consider Republicans in office, and the Republican Party has an opportunity to build its brand and win support. But if he's perceived as antagonistic towards this community, it won't serve him well in the long run. I strongly urge him not to cancel this project. I think it's very, very unwise for the state, very unwise for our regional economy, and I think it'll be unwise for him personally. I think it will, I don't think that leadership is about picking fights. And if he cancels this project, he's picking a big fight.
To piggyback on that, and what does his decision about JCI give you as a hint towards this Purple Line decision? I mean, he was not afraid to stand back and withhold $17.5 million, almost $18 million from Montgomery County and many other school districts, that depend on this money and have been pushing for, that kind of bipartisan decision. In fact, some lawmakers were saying they expected him to cave on that to avoid that mandate for the future.
Yeah, the question was, does his decision not to release the $17 million from Montgomery County and the overall money for states qualifying for the cost of education index, does that presage a decision on the Purple Line? I hope it does not. I think that $17 million would have been well spent in our county school system. His justification is that he hopes to persuade the legislature to reinvest that $17 million in the pension fund. I think that shoring up pensions is a defensible argument, although the dollars in question are relatively small, both in relation to the size of the school budget our schools will manage, and relatively small in relation to the size of the pension fund. So it became a large dispute over a relative, I mean, 17 million sounds like a lot of money to you and me, but put in context, it's not that consequential either for the conduct of the schools or for the health of the pension fund. I disagree with his decision there, but I can understand his interest in maintaining the commitment to the pension fund. I would repeat what I said before. I don't think leadership involves picking fights. I think we want a governor who brings us together, and I think at this point the state doesn't care that much whether it's a Democrat or a Republican. We want someone who's making wise decisions in the long-term interest of the state, of which education is crucial to the future of the state. Transportation alternatives are also crucial to the future of the state. So we're looking for a statesman. We're looking for someone who will bring people together, not pick unnecessary fights. And the governor still has the opportunity to be that person.
Going back to our budget and this 8 to 10 million blow from the wind case, where do we find that? This was a very tight budget year for Montgomery County.
So I think the possibility exists that we may need to make some mid-year adjustments. I'm entirely comfortable with the budget that we agreed to last week. We responded to real needs in the community and real policy priorities like the public election campaign fund that were missing in the county executive's budget proposal. So I think we made wise and smart decisions, and I think we'll get through the year, but every quarter we have to assess what the tax distribution is from Annapolis, and we have to assess whether we're able to fulfill our goals, and if we need mid-year to tighten our belt or adopt some sort of savings plan, I would hope that the executive and council would do that cooperatively. But it's too early to say whether that'll be necessary. As of right now, we have resources in the reserve to absorb this $8 to $10 million in FY16. In future years, we're going to have to live within available resources. We're not going to be able to say yes to everything.
When you say picking a fight, though, that he's picking a fight, and if were he not to award this project, I think his argument would be and has been, I was elected to make changes, and I'm a roads guy. I've got other counties that have been sitting and waiting for roads projects.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, I hope he doesn't make that argument. I hope he continues the many, many years of effort and more than $140 million of state dollars already invested in this. It would be a tremendous waste of time and effort and ingenuity, and he would walk away from $900 million in federal funds and all of the return on investment that we've seen projected in the econometric study that we commissioned. I mean, all of the facts are on the side of this project, so it would be a tremendously unwise decision to cancel it.
Do you think it was fair to compare the cost of building 2 miles to the entire school construction costs of the entire state?
Well, so first of all, the number that he cites in the Post for school construction is 1 year, whereas the Purple Line will be built over 5 years. And he's not proposing to put more money into school construction. And in fact, the voters of Maryland amended the state constitution last November to make it much more difficult to invest transportation funds, which come from the gasoline tax, in anything other than transportation. That's what the voters said they wanted. They want transportation revenues to be put towards transportation. So I don't know what he's comparing. I know that he's not saying he's going to take the money that we would put into the Purple Line and put it into school construction. He's not saying that. So I'm not, it seems to me he's comparing two things that are both underfunded. Of course we need more resources for school construction, and we need more resources for transportation alternatives. We need to invest in both. So to pit one against another when he isn't even proposing to transfer the money from one to the other seems a little bit misinformed to me.
This upcoming meeting with Leggett and Baker, do you have any indication of what that does to the timeline on the governor's decision, when we can expect him to say?
I don't. Look, I haven't gotten a meeting with the governor. My request for a meeting with Governor Hogan is still pending. So I don't have the benefit of his insight. I've met 3 times with Secretary Ron. We have good communication with Secretary Ron, but I don't have any firsthand insight into the governor's thinking.
Has the county executive had meetings with?
Yes, the county executives met the governor twice, one-on-one. And, we all see each other at public events, but actually sitting down to talk, the governor's met with Mr. Leggett twice. Anything else?
Yeah, so for the Pepco-Exelon merger, the Public Service Commission approved it. What are your thoughts on the ultimate conditions that they proposed, and where do we go from here?
Well, I understand, first of all, that the merger can't go through until it's also approved by the District of Columbia and the state of Delaware. So those things are yet to occur. But what I understand that we got from the merger agreement is several residential rate credits, about $100 credit per customer, quite a bit of money for energy efficiency initiatives, $43.2 million, 20% of which is targeted for lower income families, $14.4 million in green sustainability funds for Prince George's and Montgomery counties, $4 million for sustainable energy workforce development programs. Exelon agrees to construct 20 megawatts of renewable energy generation, and a pilot project to enable people to hike on trails below the electrical outlets, which is something that communities had asked for. So there are some wins for the communities in this merger. I hope it will make Pepco better capitalized and better able to respond to weather emergencies, because we're certainly going to have a lot more of those.
Do you share Councilmember Berliner's concerns in the Coalition for Utility Reform, trying to get more renewable energy commitments, and the concerns that Exelon owns nuclear power.
Yes, I share those concerns.
And it just, two arguments have been made. Opponents, folks like Roger Berliner, have said this is great, but these are crumbs. And Leggett has stood on the other side and said, yes, but I'd rather have these crumbs than Pepco as it is. Where do you stand?
I agree with Mr. Berliner.
Do you have concerns about, in the district, many of the opponents have said we'd be getting a giant who would have no interest in listening to our concerns. Pepco at least has demonstrated a willingness to listen to community concerns.
I understand that concern. I mean, as far as Maryland is concerned, the Public Service Commission has spoken. So we have to hope for the best. My own experience, frankly, is that Pepco has been pretty responsive at an individual level when my office brings concerns to their attention, and we'll see if there are going to be personnel changes, but the folks who work there now we're in frequent contact with them, and I've found their responsiveness to be satisfactory.
And a recent study out of Chicago showed that Exelon actually has a lower approval rating among its customers than Pepco does. And Pepco's
Pretty low.
pretty low. So, I mean, any concerns that we could be getting worse?
I just think we have to hope for the best. I mean, they made their case to the Public Service Commission, and the Public Service Commission made its decision. It wasn't before the County Council. Any other questions? Well, thank you all very much for coming. I really appreciate it.